Stoa is a digital campfire where we cohere in dialogue about what matters most at the knife's edge of what's happening now.
All right. Buckle up, everyone, because we're about to begin. Welcome to the Stoa. I am Peter Limberg, the steward of the Stoa, and the Stoa is a place for us to cohere and dialogue about what matters most at the knife's edge of this very moment. So I imagine some of you will be new here at the Stoa, in attendance right now and watching. So just to give a little preview of overview of what the Stoa is, it's kind of hard to define. Sometimes I call it a communal podcast, but we do have a wisdom gym here as well. Essentially, it's an online event space. And we opened for spiritual business when COVID came online, and we've had over probably 400 events at this point, and lots of interesting characters coming in. Noam Chomsky's coming in a couple of months, and today we have a very interesting philosopher, Alexander Dugin. He's dubbed in Western media as the most dangerous philosopher in the world, which we'll talk about in a moment. And how he came on my radar, I think it was about 2 years ago. So I was baptized as an Eastern Orthodox Christian, and I was like researching it, getting into the faith, and somehow Dugin came on my radar. And as people at the Stoa know, I have a pretty jazzy philosophical background. And I saw this guy, he has like a anti-liberal streak. He weaved postmodern thinking into his philosophy. So, and he has this like, this crazy Russian beard that would make any Western man jealous if they saw it. So this all gave me pause. And so I looked into him, and I saw Michael Millerman, who's a University of Toronto, who's doing his PhD there, studying Dugin. Me and Michael eventually became friends. Michael came to the Stoa previously. And that got me plugged in to read more about the fourth political theory, which we'll be talking about today. So I imagine we have a mix of people that are new to Dugin, and maybe some are experienced with Dugin's thoughts. So I thought we would come to terms today with a lot of the stuff and get an overview of the fourth political theory, and then we can go dive deep with the thought. So how today's going to work, I'm going to chat with Dugin for about 10-20 minutes. Pop your questions in the chat box anytime. I will call on you. You unmute yourself. You ask your question to Dugin. If you don't want to be on YouTube, because this will be on YouTube, indicate that in the chat. So that being said, I will allow Dugin to unmute himself. And you have to unmute yourself again, sir. So how are you doing today, Professor Dugin?
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. So nice to invite me. And I would like to say maybe some words about fourth political theory, because we are supposed to discuss that today. So fourth political theory is a kind of mixture of anti- or counter-modern traditionalism with postmodern and anti-modernism. So that is a kind of bridge between the radical criticism of the modernity from the right, from the pre-modern point of view, advocating the sacred tradition, pre-modern values, transcendence, hierarchy, pre-democratic states, empire, and all the values and political, philosophical, scientific sense that were previous to the modernity, before Enlightenment, before modern science, that it is advocating of the values totally abandoned, mocked, and rejected with the arrival of the modern Western paradigm. So that is the kind of advocating everything that was pre-modern in the West, and that is not modern and Western outside of the West. That is a kind of one part. And second part of fourth political theory, or the premises of the preconditions for fourth political theory, is acceptance of deconstructing of the modernity in the postmodern way of thinking, basing on Heidegger and Lacan theories, Deleuze, Guattari, everything that destroys modernity from the postmodern position or pre-modern position should be used in order to deconstruct modernity. The difference between traditionalism and fourth political theory is precisely that appeal to the radical criticism from the left of postmodernism in front of the modernity. And what is difference, the main difference between fourth political theory and postmodernism, that appeal to reaffirmation of pre-modern values destroyed by the modernity and taken for granted as something totally terrible by postmodernists. So that is a kind of a mixture. And so that is a kind of effort to encircle the modernity from all sides, from the future with postmodernism and from the past. To identify modernity, to put the modernity in the concentrational camp of some type, to put it, to limit it, to bring the modernity into some concrete limits. Outside of those limits should be developed new alternative way of political thinking. And that means, why fourth political theory? That means that that is invitation to regard three main political theory of Western modernity, liberalism, communism, and the fascism or nationalism, as the organic parts of this modernity. So it is not only anti-liberal criticism. It is anti-liberal criticism, but at the same time, it is anti-communist and anti-fascist. So idea is that three main political theories of the Western modernity with all the combination, left liberalism, right liberalism, left fascism, right fascism, communism, socialism, social democracy, Trotskyism, everything, all that has, according to this analysis, all this have the same common denominator. That belongs to the Western modern vision of the nature, of the reality, of the immanence, of the materialism, of the individualism, on the democracy, and anti-hierarchical construction from the bottom to the top. That is in all three political theories dominating in the modernity all three of them deal with the same Cartesian subject. It could be individual in liberalism, it could be class in the communism, it could be nation or race or state in the fascism or national socialism. So the idea of fourth political theory is to destroy this Cartesian subject, this res cogens, and to return to everything that preceded these modern subjects. For example, the concept of the creationism, of the man as the image of the God from the right, or some Heideggerian design, or the concept of the rhizomatic pluralism in the Deleuzian sense. So everything that is not modern is accepted. Everything that is modern is rejected. Modern in all three political ideology dominating in the modernity. So it is anti-liberalism, anti-communism or socialism, anti-fascism. And the common denominator of these three political theories dominating in the last centuries is precisely they were born in the West with modernity, and with the break with the pre-modern Western values and concept and philosophies. And that was with colonizational process was expanded to all the other part of the planet, that where this main form of modernity was imposed. So that today we could not say that is just revolt against the modernity of the West. That is revolt against everything that is Western and modern as well outside of the West. Because today in India, in Islamic world, in Africa, in Latin America, everywhere, almost everywhere, we are dealing with the Western modernity. So that is taken for granted, that we deny public dimension of the religion, we are in favor of liberal democracy, we accept individualism as the basis of political correctness. And now with first political theory, liberalism has gained, after the fall of the communism, the momentum. So that is the unique today. But that why it's so important, fourth political theory, because if we reject, for example, liberalism, and many and more today reject liberalism, they fall into the trap or either to communism or leftist criticism or nationalism as right populism growing in the world. So rejecting the political modernity in the form of liberalism, that is the main ideology today, we are falling into the trap into other version of the modernity, either communist, socialist, or fascist, and both or nationalist, and both of them are products of the same concept of modern subject, of the same materialism, of the same world vision, same immanence, the same materialism, and the same concept of this Western modernity in the politics. That is more or less the main idea of fourth political theory. So that is idea to encircle Western political modernity, to elaborate the criticism of its philosophical and ideological metaphysical premises, and to reject everything. It seems that it is pure nihilism. So if we abandon Western political modernity, what we still can have? And my idea is we can have everything. We can have Western pre-modern political ideas, Platonism, Aristotle, Christianity, Byzantine vision of Catechon, of symphony of the power and the Orthodox tradition. We can have Catholicism, we can have including some Protestant concept of the state with transcendental dimension, or Roman Empire, or some ethnic mixture of kind of Middle Ages form of different levels of power. And we could accept Islamic rule, Islamic politics, Chinese Confucianism, Indian, African. So we can accept everything. And we can finally accept Western political modernity, but put not as universal pattern that is necessary, that is imposing, that is one and only form of political thought, but regarded as one special example or possibility among many other options. So that is detotalitariarizing of the political modernity, making political modernity optional. So we can accept that if you want, we can reject that. But if you say to liberals or to communists or to fascists that we are going to reject the universal value of this political modernity, everybody, all three political theory will be very aggressive because they are based on the totalitarian attitude. In the case of communism and in the case of fascism, it is clear and explicit that these two kind of regime I have lived in one form of this communist period, that was really a totalitarian, ideologically totalitarian. It is absolutely obvious that fascism was as well the other kind of this totalitarianism, and that was clear and explicit. Now we are living in the liberal totalitarianism that is more and more explicit as well. That was implicit, fighting against communism and fascism, but after the victory of the last totalitarian form of Soviet Union, now the liberalism as the part of political modernity and racist attitude of the West imposing its own values as something universal, it's open and transparent and clear. So that is the third totalitarianism, and all kind of political modernity is totalitarian, is racist, is based on the dictatorship of one thought, communists, individualists, capitalists, or nationalists. That is only one thought and only one criterion. So the first political theory is against all kinds of universalisms, all kinds. Against liberal universalism, against communist universalism, against nationalist racism, Western ethnocentric form of any kind, and that is the defense of the pluralism. It doesn't mean that, for example, Russian values are better than Islamic or than Western. Absolutely no. But Russian values, for example, monarchy, symphony of the power, has a right to exist if we choose that, without regard to what the West, for example, or the liberal presume to be universal. That is more or less the main frame of fourth political theory. It is not the theory as such. It is just invitation to think, accepting this thesis and to develop all kind of alternative discourse, all kind. So that is the anti-liberal, anti-communist, anti-fascist pluralism, anti-Western, anti-modern pluralism and plurality, multipolarity, possibility to accept everything that is human as not underdeveloped or maybe destined to repeat the Western history. It is just a kind of application of the anthropological principles to modern political landscape. More or less, that is the main idea, and the philosophical aspect in it is to destroy or deconstruct the modern subject of René Descartes, deconstruct to say it is just one of the possibility among many other to consider the humanity, the human identity, for example, and Heideggerian criticism of the modernity, Heideggerian destruction and analytic of design can be a kind of main line to follow, and that's absolutely not as something universal, not to replace, design should replace traditional Western res cogens of René Descartes, but Heidegger analysis is just example how it could be done, how we can deconstruct the Western philosophy, the Western science, and phenomenology in general, how we can use Heideggerian philosophy and phenomenology of Brentano, Husserl, and other phenomenologists, how we could use phenomenology in order to deconstruct the Western modernity and to confront with some pre-modern, post-modern, not Western and not modern type of political thought. Everything is accepted, including the same Western political modernity is not rejected, is put as something optional. The main idea is to liberate the liberalism from its totalitarian aspect, liberate socialism and fascism from its totalitarian racist attitude toward the enemy of open society, enemy of proletarian class or Aryan race. All these kinds of totalitarian way of thought, explicit today, including in the last form of political modernity represented in the globalism, in the liberalism. So that should be accepted as just optional. Liberalism optional, modernity optional. We can choose modernity, absolutely, but we could refuse. That is the problem. We could accept, we could reject, but we could, in the liberal way of thought, we could accept liberalism and we could not accept it. Otherwise, we are done. So we will be considered the enemy of open society and dealt accordingly. So, as for example, the last point, my YouTube accounts recently was cancelled. My Google email was recently cancelled. Last week, my Twitter account was cancelled, and my books and forced political theory is prohibited to distribute through Amazon. So post service, Google service is not just to search, it is just political censorship. So if you're liberal, if you agree with these liberal universalism, welcome to use all that. If you disagree with that, you have no right. You will be deplatformed with no reason, with no explanation at all. That is just confirmation of my ideas. So I'm not deploring that. So it's just everything fits very well in order. So thank you for your attention, and I can develop the discourse or answer your questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, you covered most of my follow-up questions, but I wanted to double click on the fourth political theory. As you mentioned, you said it was an invitation many times, and the subject line of the first three political theories, or the subject of choice, the individual, race, and class. In contrast, the fourth political theory, you said the subject there is Dasein. I don't know if I fully grok that, and I understand what you're saying, what it could afford us, but maybe you can kind of speak more about what that means to you and why you chose that particular term.
Of Dasein.
Yeah.
Yes. That was, according to my understanding, we could not just return to the pre-modernity, or at least, in order to return to the pre-modernity, we need to prepare the ground for that. And there are already some historical battle when the monarchies, the Christians, the defenders of the Middle Ages way of political organization have lost their battle. So we should revise that. We should return to that moment, but we could not do that without understanding the logic of modernity. We could not do that without asking ourselves why the modernity, and that traditionalists and conservatives generally lack this why modernity. They say, oh, modernity is bad, let's resist the modernity, and the conservatives and traditionalists, they just follow modernity, saying, oh, not such speed, please, not so slow, please, slower, please, so it's not today, maybe tomorrow. So that is just reactionary. So the defense of the pre-modernity is just reactionary without understanding why modernity, what is the reason, what is the telos in Aristotelian terms. And Heidegger provides something different. He deconstructs modernity. He makes from modernity a kind of logical moment and development of the history of the West and of the Western thought and Western philosophy that precisely is abandoning and forgetting of the concept or the idea of being. So the process to forget the question of being is something logical, and according to Heidegger, that is a kind of explanation of this modernity. So what is modernity? This complete oblivion of the question of being. And the previous periods, stages of the Western philosophy were a kind of preparation in the same direction. And when Heidegger proposes to get out from this situation, not just returning to the past, not in the reactionary way, but proposing new beginning. So to understand, to grasp the meaning, why we have forgotten the being, the West, and how we need and where we should find it once more. And that is precisely, everything is connected to Dasein concept. So we should deconstruct all kind of Western subject, philosophical, of modern, and we need to rely on Dasein in order to put once more the question of being. So we need to start with the most profound, in my opinion, problem, and on that basis to develop as well fourth political theory as application, as praxis, practical aspect of this new philosophy of new beginning, and returning to authentic existence of the Dasein. Selbst of Dasein, self of Dasein should replace alienated subject. That is rather das Man in Heideggerian term. That is main idea, that is why Dasein. But speaking with the disciple of Heidegger, Professor Hermann in Freiburg some years ago, I have suggested the idea that there is as well in Heidegger one very important thing. He thought, Heidegger, that Dasein is universal, but in my opinion, it is not. Dasein depends on the culture, on the civilization. And we have spoken with von Hermann that Heidegger wouldn't accept this multiplicity of Daseins, this multitude of Daseins, because Heidegger was somehow linked to only to Western form. He was very critical and very innovative, criticizing Western modernity, but still he was the part of this Western universalism, but in a very special thing. So there is a very important shift in my reading of Heidegger. I have dedicated to that problem my book on Russian Dasein that is now translated by our friend Michael Millerman. He has finished the translation, where I try to apply Heideggerian concept of Dasein to Russian identity. And I have come to the conclusion that many existentials should be changed, applying to. So we could not apply Heideggerian understanding of Dasein to the Daseins of other culture, because we have different relation to death. We have different relation to the horror, to the care, and other existential aspects. So my understanding of Dasein is plural. Heidegger as well, he has spoken about German Dasein, and that was legitimate. But when he say Dasein is unique, He thought that the German design is Western design is universal design. The same attitude of the European ethnocentrism. In my opinion, there is German design, there is Western design, there is different totally Chinese design, Russian design, Indian design, African design, and maybe inside of these cultures and civilizations, we could identify the other kinds of design. So my second definition of the subject of first political theory is the people, not society, not ethnic groups, nor race, absolutely, nor class, nor individual, but community of the destiny, sharing the same existential identity. So the design on one hand, and the people as the philosophical concept as well abandoned in the modernity. We are dealing with individual, we are dealing with race, we are dealing with nation, with state, with class, with society, but not with the people. And the people from Renaissance still is in the heart of our constitution. So our interpretation of modern constitutions is a kind of usurpation, ideological usurpation of the concept of the people. Because for liberals, people is the sum of individuals, for communists that is the form of class, and for nationalists, the people is political nation. But people neither is one of this thing. It is community of this of the shared existence, of shared cultural identity based on the same, more or less the same relation to death. So that is existential concept.
Cool. Thank you, Professor Dugin. We're now going to pivot to the Q&A. When I call on you, unmute yourself, unless you indicate it otherwise, like me to read on your behalf. There's a lot of smart people in this room, and I'm sure you're going to ask tough but respectful questions. This is not a debate. You got one follow-up question. If I'm generous, I may give you another one, but just keep it at one follow-up. Have that in mind. So I'll tag in Ariel first.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Professor Dugin. This is fascinating. I guess what comes to mind is I see the criticism, the criticism you're drawing when it comes to like liberalism and communism. But when it comes to fascism, I guess I do see fascism as being more of a romantic movement, and some people, you could see it more as like kind of almost encircling liberalism from like the future and the past in a way that you're sort of describing fourth political theory. So I'm wondering if you could maybe elaborate on the similarities and differences between fourth political theory and fascism.
Okay, so I consider the fascism as the part of political modernity, and that I am following analysis of idea analysis that totalitarianism is not pre-modern, but modern phenomenon of Hannah Arendt. I'm following in that understanding Hannah Arendt. And I think that fascism is based on the same alienation as liberalism and communism. But instead of the subject, individual or class, that fascism is dealing with the nation. But what is the nation, for example? Nation is the bourgeois concept that has appeared at the end of the Middle Ages and has replaced the concept of the estate, of the church, of the empire, of the small peasant community. And that nation was based on individual citizenship. So appeal to the nationalism that is clear, the basis of the fascism and National Socialism is, in my opinion, already the essential part of political modernity. So I'm rejecting fascism as nationalism. Next, I am absolutely rejecting racism in all kinds, in biological racism, the color of skin racism, class racism, technological racism, because, in my opinion, we could not measure the different human societies by hierarchy between them. So archaic people or developed people, rich people or poor people, we could not compare basing on the criteria borrowed from one of them. So, for example, we could not, because in my opinion, all peoples create their own systems of value. They are incompatible. We could not, incommensurable. They are totally original. And the idea of racism is to declare that one race or one technological culture or one system of values or one civilization is higher than other. So racism, in my opinion, is precisely something modern, because we could not find the racism in Middle Ages. We couldn't find slavery in Middle Ages. All these kind of racism or slavery is based on the Western practices of the modernity. So it could seem, I many times I was accused to be in favor of fascism, but that is absolutely not so. I'm using Heidegger, I'm using Evola, I'm appealing to Carl Schmitt or Ernst Junger, as well as to Foucault, as well as to Deleuze, as well as to Freud, to Jung, to many other authorities, but liberals trying to undermine my position, try to reduce my position to kind of third political theory. But if you just look in my book, Fourth Political Theory, you will find the criticism of third political theory of nationalism, fascism. So I see people was not in the center of none of third political theory, nation, state, race, and not the people, because the people, it is not a political construction, it was something a kind of something original, something sacred and spiritual that was abandoned in the beginning of the political modernity. So more than that, I think that the main, the worst of the political modernity is totalitarianism and racism, precisely. It could be openly in the white man against other, as in Hitler, or Germans against all, but it could be as well in the class. Because if we try to, only proletarian are the revolutionary class, but peasantry, for example, in our history, was considered to be a bourgeois class that should be exterminated. And that was the practice of Bolshevik. That was as well the kind of racism, class racism. And I think that now liberals behave themselves as racists, because they say the first class people are developed Western civilization, and everybody who share the same values all through the world, and they impose their multiculturalism values, liberal values, political correctness through cancel culture, through the platforming, imposing, obliging the other, demonizing everyone who is against it. That is liberal racism. So I am against all kind of racism. I am against nationalism, and I am against modern state. So finally, I think that reversal from the globalism to the modern state is not solution, absolutely. I am in favor not state organization of the society that can be empire, something much more sacred than state, or that could be anarchist communities, small anarchist communities. So it is not not the state that is, in my opinion, kind of concept that should replace liberal globalization. So in that sense, if you put that together, there is nothing of the fascism or nationalism in this opinion, and all that I'm saying in all my writings. So I am against the West because the West is fascist, because the West is racist, because the West tries to impose its values as universal. That only one reason for that. And the last thing, when Amazon people were asked why they don't distribute my books, they have answered, because Dugin is fascist. I have asked one of my far-right person in Italy, in Rome, the chief of Libreria Europa, how he could deal in the distribution of his purely nationalist, fascist, neo-fascist books on Amazon. He has answered, no problem. So no problem. So I could distribute everything. So I am censored for fashions that I don't share absolutely, with the full liberty to distribute the real fascist books on the same Amazon. That is very important. They try to describe me in order to not to enter in discussion. They try to impose this wrong image. That, for example, when the people, as Michael Millerman and the other people in other countries, in Israel, when they come to know my real writings, they were very astonished. So they could find nothing that could justify such idea. So I have I just mentioned enumerated main points of disagreement, fundamental disagreement with third political theory. So, and that is not just for talk of today. So everything that is in I have written more than 60 books. So in my 60 books, and more than that, I'm affirming only that. So nothing we cannot find any place in that in favor of third political theory. But for liberals, it's almost impossible to imagine anti-liberal being neither communist nor fascist. It's impossible. And their ideology that couldn't exist. That is unrealistic. So they prefer to describe myself as crypto-fascist, as hidden fascists, and maybe would-be fascists, and something like that. So that is the easiest way to discard any serious argument. So, but when we come to the principles, it's not so easy to reject them, because partly I agree with pluralism or multiculturalism. I advocate that. So, but not in the liberal way. So I think that I'm absolutely against all kind of racism. And when I say that, for example, I have made many interviews with CNN, BBC, many of them. When they show only the fragments, they judge could discredit me. All the other is cancelled. So that is, as Soviet Union, I lived in Soviet Union. I know how it works. That is just the censorship. So you put from answers what fits to your main concept. You put aside everything that doesn't fit. For example, I was asked whether Russian government financed Trump's American campaign. I have said yes. All the cameras are on. Everybody wants to know details. I have explained. As long as I know, our oligarchs have financed Hillary Clinton campaign, thinking that she was going to win. All the camera immediately stopped. nothing, no, this part of interview is cut. So they show only what they want to show. So that is one, that's pure totalitarianism. And the same with fascism. So if I say something that could be compared with third political theory, I am welcomed to continue. If I start criticism of fascism, all the camera went off, there is nothing follows. So that is the way of totalitarian cancel culture, and that is precisely that shows that we are dealing with liberalism as with ideology, and ideology is based on the canceling the opponent. I am considered to be enemy of open society. I am, and I could accept that. I am enemy of open society because I think that open society is totalitarian liberal concept. So in that sense, I could be judged for that. I don't like Popper. I think that is the way that justify a kind of repression against ideological opponents. That is not acceptable. But I am very, very critical toward all kind of nationalism, fascism, and above all racism. So that is my position. When I'm accused of something I'm guilty of, I could easily accept that. For example, I am guilty to be a liberal. I am anti-liberal, radically anti-liberal, but I'm that's at the same time, I am absolutely anti-fascist, anti-nationalist, and more than that, radically anti-racist.
Right. So we got tons of questions, and they're like amazing questions in the chat. I think we were originally scheduled for 60 minutes, and we're coming up with 10 minutes. Are you cool to stay 15, 30 minutes after the hour, Dugin?
Yes.
Or, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
No pressure.
So if anyone has to leave at the hour, you can leave. So if you want to stay for another half hour, then you can do that and you can ask your question. Rain, you had a question above on universalism.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm looking at the way that the fourth political theory, as you've described it, incorporates the deconstructionism of modernism, and specifically targets it at modernity and deconstructs modernity. And the way that postmodernism sort of does that in the name of justice. It says there's these dominator hierarchies, we're going to deconstruct all of the hegemonic structures, and it has this notion of justice or equality or deconstructing power. And I hear that you've adopted the deconstructionist approach and applied it to modernity, but I haven't heard you talk about what I think is sort of the better part of postmodernism, is the sensibility of a better world and the sensibility of justice. So, and they've, in my belief, made the mistake of having, as you describe it, sort of these totalitarian censorship policies. Totally agree. And yet, where do you include sort of the raison d'etre of the deconstruction, the idea that it's meant, at least in the liberal sense, it's meant to create a more just world?
So I think that, first of all, I think that the concept of justice is not modern at all. It's very, very traditional. And there are many forms of understanding of justice. For example, we think the justice more or less as a kind of equality. But for example, in Jewish tradition, justice is power and force. It's judgment, justice, and the beauty and the goodness is pardon. So justice is not against injustice. Justice is against the pardoning. So to pardon, to give something for we don't deserve. So justice is again the gift. Justice is the rigorous attitude, and the gift or pardon, it is a good attitude. So justice is very, very special in Greeks as well, and Stoics and Aristotle and Platonists. They considered justice precisely as well, and as this Jewish tradition, spiritual tradition, it was considered to be a kind of very, very strong and limiting concept, rather than everybody's happiness and the free distribution of that. First, so justice in politics, it is as well the concept of the left in egalitarian sense, and postmodernism is marked by this leftist tradition, so it is in favor of the egalitarian concept of justice. But if we regard Gilles Deleuze and Guattari above all concept, we see not the justice, we see the will to the nothing, as strong will to nothing, and pure liberation of all kinds of sub-rational desires rather than justice. It is just the liberating of the post-individual or kind of dividual, the partly fragmented self, the splitting of self and the basis of the small and chaotic desires manifested as rhizomatic networks. That was not justice, because there is no normal human subject. It is a kind of reaction against humanism, against individualism and against humanism, but that is very particular thing. And about deconstructing the term and the concept was introduced in the first pages of Sein und Zeit of Heidegger. So it was taken by Derrida, Jacques Derrida, after. But the main concept of deconstruction was to put precisely philosophical idea in the historical context defined by the process of oblivion of the being. That was the initial meaning of deconstruction and or destruction in Heidegger, destruction. And after that, that was, as many other Heideggerian concepts, this concept was borrowed by postmodernism. And my reading of postmodernism, I pick up everything that is Heideggerian. There are so many things Heideggerian in Sartre and Deleuze, and I'm trying to restore their original phenomenological sense. So that is my reading of postmodernism. But I think that justice depends on the culture. So I am in favor of justice, but for example, the Russian understanding of justice can be very different from Chinese understanding of justice. So I am pluralist as well in that sense. So I think the justice in all the peoples, that is the real values. And liberalism has nothing to do with justice. That is very important. They don't speak about justice because either liberty or justice. Liberalism chooses liberty, and illiberalism, left, mostly left, chooses justice. So in that sense, I am choosing as well rather justice. In that, where I find that as the positive value, I am rather inclined to be with such demand for more justice or for justice and liberty as well. For me, in the liberals' understanding, it is not the value, because it is totally negative. That's liberty from all kind of collective identity. I'm in favor of collective identity. And speaking with Mill, John Stuart Mill, I'm in favor of freedom, but against liberty. I am defending the freedom and justice, but not liberty as this individualism. But with one remark that justice should be put in the historical and cultural context, because if we just try to translate the concept of justice, for example, in some African language, or in Chinese, or in Indian, Sanskrit, for example, or try to find something in Islam, we will be, or in a Judaic tradition, we will immediately in totally different concept. We could not, for example, we could easily lose totally the meaning with such translation. And we are forgetting to make such translation. We are forgetting the other that's very important. And other understands justice not as ourselves, not as this prevalent attitude in our own culture. So in that sense, I think that postmodernism is as well too Western, so universalist. It sometimes applying to be applied to the anthropology that gives very good example. For example, New Anthropology, Edward Kohn, De Scola, de Castro, when they accept this plurality of the human cultures. In that sense, postmodernism is very, very important. But as well, it is not free from some Western universalism and some kind of epistemological racism that we should overcome at any price.
Cool. Peter Jones, you had a few questions above. If you can unmute yourself and ask them.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for your time, Professor Dugin. Let me ask a question about the scalability of the fourth political theory. I'm interested in your work on the definition of the civilization, and I wonder about the relationship of that to scaling the fourth political theory across the levels of the social. And so I don't know if you're familiar with, you probably are, Nassim Taleb's Principia Politica. He denotes the idea of the fractal scaling of politics, as your political commitment can differ from the family to the communitas to the nation. And he doesn't define civilization, but I think as you do, I'd like to hear that. He says there's really no scaling of the political commitments at each level. We might be a communist with our families. It might be a liberal in your city, but at your nation be a libertarian. But so if we look at Dasein, does that scale from, I mean, I think it does actually. Why there's some workability here, because Dasein should seem to scale from the small to the universal. But what level, how do you see the universal, if the civilization is the culture writ large, is there a collective Dasein that some cultures can perform, but other cultures may find inaccessible? Will it scale? Can a civilization participate in a collective Dasein?
Thank you. That is a very important question. I have written the other important book on the same as fourth political theory, that is called The Theory of Multipolar Worlds, where precisely I'm concentrating on the explaining the meaning of the pole of multipolarity. What is the pole? And in my opinion, the pole is not state, because state is the part of Western political modernity. So pole should be different. If we accept this multitude, this pluralism, we should abandon the concept of necessity of the state, because it's projection of the same Western ethnocentric, racist, totalitarian vision. So we should accept the state optional. So in one society, in one tradition, state could be the main scale. So for example, everything will be, all the other scaling can be secondary to the state. for some peoples and civilization. For other civilizations, scaling can be totally different without such a balance. So, how many civilizations, so many forms of scaling, not only family, community, clan, class, religion, ethnic, and so on, political, individual. So we can, so in my opinion, civilization is living being, or the planet. So we couldn't apply, for example, the condition of living on the Venus to the planet Mars or to the planet Jupiter. So we should understand the constellation, the system. Maybe there are some values that all of us can share, but we don't know from the beginning. From the very beginning, we don't know. Maybe there are, but if we want to arrive to some global, really shared values, we need to ask everybody. We need to ask small indigenous tribes what they think about justice or scale or human or marriage or sex or political power. But there are Pirahan tribes in Amazon River, that have no numbers, and we shouldn't regard them as undeveloped, some kind of monkeys. They are human, and they have all the right to have civilization without numbers. So numbers are not universal. They could not count 1 or 2. That means that 1 or 2 calculation is optional for the human. They are human. I am insisting, they are human, and only those monkeys who think they are not human. So I reverse that. In that sense, we can arrive to some major scale, major basis of design, to real humanism, to real common denominator of these civilizations, but only after to accepting all kinds of societies, all kinds of design, all kinds of culture as full-scale humans. And that is not the way of the political modernity. That's always have some enemy of open society, of class, of nation, some underdeveloped, some untermenschen for subhuman for liberals today. I am subhuman in their eyes. So for example, Lewis has spoken with myself as with monkey, precisely. So that was very interesting. He didn't bother to read his own book, but I have read his book. I have used the argument. He didn't recognize his book. I was speaking with myself. So because I am Russian, I am in Putin's lander, and so I am subhuman, I am fascist, I am Untermensch. That is the way by the Western universalists deal with other. And when they see Muslims, oh, so poor Muslims, they don't know yet that God doesn't exist, doesn't exist. So we will teach them little by little, we will integrate them. So, but their understanding of human being in Islam is the relation with God. That's more important scale than family, than political power. Relations to God. That means to be Muslim man or a Muslim woman. So that is interesting. And when we see, oh, maybe that is prejudices, let's treat them correctly, but we should not share. We will re-educate them and will destroy their humanness, Islamic understanding of humanness. So I think that scaling as well should not be universal. And Taleb is, as many westernized author as well, is dealing with the same universalism. So he sometimes is interesting, but what is important, multipolarity and concept of civilization should be taken in the plural. civilizations with S. And that means that we could not use so easily, for example, the concept scaling. It's good and better to use scaling than use some universal concept for example, human rights. That is pure racist concept. Human rights, that we know what is human and we know what is right. We are going to teach you. You are not human, you are semi-human. We will teach you what really human is, what the right is. If you protest, we will bomb you with humanitarian purposes. That is the way to liberal to deal with other. But I think that it's better to use the scaling. It's better, already better a little bit, but it's not enough.
Thank you for that. If I can ask one follow-up question, can I ask for do you have a sense of foresight for the end of Enlightenment era in the West? I mean, what would you suggest is happening now? Could the West be breaking into several types of civilizations that we don't yet recognize as such? You know, this is a group in the Stoa, we talk about mimetic tribes, but again, writ large, there are much larger forces at work across the West, and the kind of breakdown of the G7 and the war against populism. Is there a breakup into different civilizations happening?
I think that the Enlightenment has arrived to its end, and postmodernism as well, and highlighting that. So that we are coming to the end of Enlightenment, and I think that this understanding that we are arriving to the end of Enlightenment changes not only Enlightenment, but as well our understanding of what Enlightenment was. Because if something has ended, we can see it in a whole scale. So there is the speculative realists. I am interested as well in them. And Nick Land, for example, has introduced the concept of the dark enlightenment. Dark enlightenment. It is idea that enlightenment were parasitic racist things imposing some slavery concept on the other. We, in the West, everybody thought that that was the kind of arrival of new liberty, the justice, equality, but that was the new kind of real dictatorship, censorship, and genocide as such. And these people, accelerationists, they advocate that. They say, let's continue this dark enlightenment. So let's be openly destructive, violent, and that will be the logical end of all these projects. So enlightenment is not so was not so enlightening. Maybe it is completely different. And I agree with that. I don't like enlightenment at all. Now I am working on the series of lectures to deconstruct the natural science of enlightenment, trying to find the moment when everything went wrong. And I have identified this precisely with the abandoning of Aristotle. So I think Aristotle and in the Platonism were the real basis for real science. And atomism, introduced against Aristotle and Platonism, was the end of this black or dark enlightenment in the natural science as well. That was a kind of new materialist metaphysics that has destroyed the real identity of the West. So I think that now, that is not, for example, we could not say, oh, there was very good process of enlightenment, and now that process is in danger, that's in decline. The problem is we see the reality of the enlightenment, that never this phenomenon was such as we imagined it to be previously. So from the beginning, that was something wrong with that. That was something incorrect. That was something terrible. And now it's reality is manifesting, and it is and when we see the reality of the essence of the Enlightenment, we reject it. So that is something. For example, when we see that liberalism is totalitarian, we are rejecting it because we thought that it was just the contrary to what now it clearly manifested it is. So I think so. Enlightenment is over, but the thought of the Enlightenment and the understanding of reality of the Enlightenment has just begun. So we are in the first stage of rethinking, revising what is was Enlightenment. And I think from our revision and from this understanding of the reality of the Enlightenment depends the future. Because we could just deplore that or try to save that, and that will multiply the violence and the racism and the agony of the wounded dragon of Western hegemony. Or we can accept that, deconstruct it in a proper way in order to say what it is to still is to be saved.
Right. So we might have one more question. Connor, if you can unmute yourself, you had a question about ecological collapse.
Yeah, so I was wondering regarding global concerns, like what is the fourth political theory's position on ecological collapse and the potential dangers of human overpopulation? And then there's a related tie-in that was regarding global concerns such as the environment and climate. Would each state have highest authority and how to address this, or would you wish for any global institution to have authority above the nation state, which doesn't seem to be the case? Thank you.
So I think that as well, first of all, the ecology is today so actual because of the industrialization, technology, and materialism of the modernity. So the ecological problem has come with modernity, accelerating more and more, precisely following the so-called technological progress. So the more industrialization, more ecological problems. But in order to solve this problem, we could not accept nature as a kind of objective reality. The nature and the human, they are two poles of the same being, because human is not something outside of nature, and nature is not something outside of the human. And that was forgotten and abandoned and rejected with the beginning of the modernity. So in order to solve ecological problem, we could not give the power to solve that to some supranational institution or national institution, because any kind of supranational institution or national institution will be modern. And modernism as psychic disease, in my opinion, that's mental disease, modernity. So we could not give to schizophrenics the right to cure diseases of the humanity, because the political leadership on the national or on the global level are both. There are two kinds of schizophrenic. They are still in the same paradigm of modernity. They are all totally educated in the materialism and in atheism and the form. They are the parts of the problem. So we could not solve the problem with relations between human and nature, with the wrong products, misfits of this relation. So that relation was the problematic, and now it is problematic up to the level of the destruction of both of the nature and the human. We both are on the edge of catastrophe, and we could not give the power to solve this problem to those who are the most dangerous maniacs, who have created or conserved that. So we need to revise the human and the nature. We have no technical solution for ecology. So that is my opinion. So ecology should be put in the critical context of the rediscovering the reality of the modernity. That is the only way, not just add to force political theory ecological dimension. That will be too simple and wrong, I think. We need to go with force political theory and with Heideggerianism, with its criticism toward modernity, inside of very, very special metaphysical relation between human and not human around us. And maybe, as new anthropologists suggest, maybe to find out the human dimension of unhuman and human dimension of inhumans. But that is philosophical solution and metaphysical problem. It could not be solved technically. So that is not about techniques, that's about destiny. So we are inside of such crisis, ecological crisis, not just because of some technological, some small technical problem. That is destiny. Technique is destiny, as Heidegger has said, as Friedrich Georg Junger has explained it in his beautiful books that is called Perfectness of the Perfection of the Technique. I strongly recommend you. That is purely metaphysical approach to the problem of technology.
All right. So we're gonna land the plane here. Thank you everyone for your questions. We didn't get to all of them, but hopefully we'll have Professor Dugin back sometime. Would you like to have any closing thoughts before we end today?
So there are many interesting questions about Jonas, the author of, by the way, the book of Gnosticism, very interesting. So just in order to close this debates or conversation, I think that we are living in very important moment, all of us. And as someone recently has said, maybe we are the last human generation in the history, because the singularity and replacement of the human by post-humans is arriving, is closer and closer. So on us is the great responsibility. And that is very, very exciting, very challenging to live in the moment when the humanity is put under question. Maybe it is unique chance to be born in such radical situation. And when we just deplore some technical details that we have small salary, or there are coronavirus measures, when we are dissipating in a small problem and don't put in front of us the real huge issues we are dealing with. So it is great waste of the chance to be born in the end of time. It's fantastic. Finally, it's very demands huge responsibility, but at the same time that is great opportunity, because now we need to revise everything we thought it is already taken for granted, clear, obvious, natural, self-evident. So all kinds of such things don't exist anymore. So everything should be put under question. And I think that we are not alone in that. We have the huge philosophical tradition behind us. We have experience of many other cultures and philosophies and religions and societies. We are not alone. There is all the treasure, all the heritage of the humanity, of religious Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Confucianism, Taoism, postmodernism, anthropology, so phenomenology. So we have so many paths to explore in order to arrive to some real decision, as Heidegger has said. We are living in front of the last decision, and that is the reality. That is not for the leaders, because the leaders are the products, they are mechanical parts. If we could not say, oh, this should be decided by some political elites. There is no elite, or modern elite is totally incapable, that doesn't fit absolutely existing elite, national, global, to solve such a question, to make such a decision. So we are all inside, we are all invited. We are all, we have this mission ourselves. We are the bearers of Dasein. We are still humans. Maybe not for too long, but we are still them. And that is huge responsibility in front of all generation, past and the future. So that is really crucial moments. And I think that demand from us some special efforts. We should participate in the greatest decision, as Heidegger has said, or about new beginning or the ending of what should be ended.
Beautiful. Nice way to end today's session. I'll make some announcements in a moment, but first, Professor Dugin, thank you so much for visiting us at the Stoa today. I hope you had a good time, and we'd love to have you back soon.
Okay.
So we're going to stop recording in a moment, but if anyone would like to hang around, Ariel is going to do a post-sense-making session. She has a series here at the Stoa called The Dangerous Space, where she talks about dangerous ideas, and she's going to have these post-sense-making sessions after the event. So Ariel, do you want to just kind of briefly say what that's about, so if anyone wants to hang around?
I think we're just going to chat about this. There's like so much stuff here to process. So we'll probably go into smaller groups, then chat a bit, and come back to the larger group, that kind of thing.
Cool, cool. So upcoming events today, we have some pretty awesome events. Derek Jensen, taking his thoughts wherever they go, is an anarcho-primitivist. He might not show, he just emailed me saying his Wi-Fi is spotty, but I'll let whoever RSVPs to that know on email what's happening there. Brett Weinstein, he's going to come in, talk about his Unity 2020. Raven Connolly, are you still in the room? Can you unmute yourself and maybe plug that? Yeah.
Sure. Hi, Peter. Yeah, so Brett's going to be coming in at 6:30 Eastern time, and I'll be interviewing him. I'm one of his former students, so it's going to be really exciting to talk to him about Unity 2020. And I think it also ties into some themes that Dugin brought up about censorship on Twitter. So that's something that Brett has been facing as well. So come if you're curious about a new political movement that's happening right here in America, and trying to face the duopoly, basically. That's what his project is. So join us later today if you're interested in that.
Very cool. And if you're new here, we have people from all across the political spectrum. Tomorrow we have John Zerzan, who is a former confidant of the Unabomber. We have Glenn Wallace coming in to talk about anarchism. All this can be found on the website. We have like tons of events coming up. Check it out. If you'd like to support us on Patreon while we steal the culture, feel free to do that by clicking on the link. So that being said, I'm going to stop to record. We'll go on a bio break, and within a minute, I'll take Ariel in, and then we'll have a post-sense-making dangerous space session. So thanks everyone for coming. Play some music. Boom.